John Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he carefully observed the bullet ant colony in his research station. The small building sat deep in the Amazon rainforest, surrounded by the rich sounds of wildlife. John had spent 15 years studying these fascinating insects. Their painful sting earned them their name, like being shot by a bullet, many people said. The day had been like any other until the sky suddenly lit up with strange, pulsing lights. John stepped outside, his eyes wide with wonder. The lights grew brighter, casting blue and purple shadows across the forest floor. Birds flew away in panic. The normal jungle sounds went quiet. "What on earth?" John whispered. He grabbed his satellite phone to call his research partner, but the device was dead. So was his backup radio. Something was blocking all signals. A low humming sound filled the air. The light centered above the small clearing near his research station, growing so bright that John had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, a massive object hovered there, clearly not from Earth. The object was smooth and oval-shaped, with a metallic surface that shifted colors like oil on water. It descended slowly, landing without disturbing a single leaf. John stood frozen, his heart pounding. He was a scientist, trained to observe, but nothing had prepared him for this. A seam appeared in the side of the craft. It widened into a doorway, releasing a soft hiss of air. John held his breath. A figure emerged, tall, nearly 8 feet in height, with a body covered in what looked like an iridescent exoskeleton. It had 4 arms and walked on 2 legs. Its head featured multiple eyes that glinted in the fading daylight and moved independently of each other. What might have been a mouth was surrounded by small moving parts like mandibles. The creature spotted John and tilted its head. Then it made a series of clicking sounds. A small device on its chest lit up. "Human, we come in peace." The voice sounded artificial, clearly translated by the device. John's scientific curiosity overcame his fear. "Who ... What are you?" "We are Zarthans. We have observed your planet for many of your years. I am Commander Krex." The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You are alone here?" John nodded. "My name is John Miller. I'm a scientist studying ants." He pointed to his small station. "That's my research facility." The alien's eyes shifted, focusing on the building. "You study ... small creatures?" "Yes. Insects, specifically ants." 2 more aliens emerged from the craft. They were similar to the first, but with slightly different coloring. They approached with what seemed like caution, their movements smooth and precise. "Show us, Commander Krex." Sighed, still dazed, John led them to his research station. The aliens had to duck to enter the simple building. Inside, glass containers housed several ant colonies, each carefully maintained to study different behaviors. "These are bullet ants," John explained, pointing to his main research colony. "They have the most painful sting of any insect on Earth." The 3 aliens leaned close to the glass. Their mandibles clicked rapidly, and John realized they were communicating among themselves. The translator device activated again. "These primitive creatures are what you dedicate your life to studying?" Krex asked. Something in the tone suggested amusement or perhaps disbelief. "They're fascinating," John defended. "Bullet ants have complex social structures. They're among the largest ants in the world and can lift many times their own body weight." The aliens made a sound that John could only interpret as laughter. Their bodies shook slightly, and their mandibles clicked faster. "On our world, we engineered away such biological inefficiencies millennia ago," Krex said. "These creatures are evolutionary dead ends." John felt a flash of annoyance. They've survived on Earth for millions of years. Their colonies function like superorganisms. Each ant knows its role and works for the good of the whole. The aliens seemed unimpressed. One of them tapped the glass, causing the ants inside to scatter in defensive patterns. "Your Earth is full of such chaotic biological systems," Krex said. "It is interesting, but primitive." Over the next few hours, John showed the aliens his research and answered their many questions about Earth. They seemed especially interested in Earth's ecosystems and the variety of species. Yet every explanation was met with the same superior attitude. "We have come to establish diplomatic relations with your planet," Krex finally explained. "Our ships are making contact with your world leaders now. We offer technological exchange and cultural sharing." "That's amazing," John said, struggling to process everything. "But why make first contact here, in the middle of nowhere? We detected unusual biochemical patterns in this region. Your ants produce compounds unlike anything we have cataloged." Krex turned to look at the ant colonies again. They were clearly simple creatures. The next 3 days passed in a blur. More Zarthans arrived, setting up equipment around John's research station. They took samples of everything: plants, soil, water, and insects. John answered countless questions and tried to learn about them in return. News finally reached him through a Zarthan communication device. Their ships had appeared over major cities worldwide. Earth's governments were in emergency sessions. The Zarthans had offered peaceful exchange, but made it clear they considered themselves far superior. On the 4th day, John noticed something odd. The Zarthans avoided going outside during the hottest, most humid parts of the day. When they did venture out, they first applied a clear substance to their exoskeletons. "What is that coating?" John asked Krex, pointing to the bottle one Zarthan was using. "Environmental protection," Krex answered dismissively. "Your planet's atmosphere contains elements irritating to our biology." Later that day, John found a Zarthan scientist examining his bullet ant colony with special equipment. The alien didn't notice John watching from the doorway. "These specimens produce the highest concentration of the problematic compound," the Zarthan said into a recording device. "Recommend priority elimination when ecosystem restructuring begins." John stepped back quietly, his mind racing. Ecosystem restructuring? Elimination? The friendly scientific exchange suddenly felt different. That evening, a military helicopter landed in the clearing. A woman in an officer's uniform approached John as he stood outside his station. "Dr. Miller?" "I'm Major Sam Carter." "We need to talk." She glanced at the Zarthan ship, privately. They walked into the forest, far enough away to speak without being overheard. "The Zarthans have proposed a partnership to help us optimize Earth's ecosystems," Sam explained, "starting with the elimination of what they call unnecessary species, beginning with most insects." John's blood ran cold. "They can't do that? It would collapse our entire ecosystem." "They claim they can engineer replacements that are more efficient." Sam's expression was grim. "Several world leaders are considering their offer. The technology they're dangling is centuries beyond ours." John remembered the Zarthan scientist's words. "They're especially interested in eliminating ants. And I've noticed they seem sensitive to something in our environment." "That's why I'm here," Sam said. "We need your expertise." "Something about the Zarthans doesn't add up. Their technology is incredible, yet they seem almost afraid of certain aspects of Earth." John looked back toward his research station, where the aliens moved with such confidence. Their mockery of Earth's insects echoed in his mind. "They think our insects are a joke," he said quietly. "A primitive evolutionary mistake. Then help us figure out why they're in such a hurry to get rid of them." Sam replied. As the sun set over the Amazon, John realized his life's work studying. The tiny creatures the Zarthans dismissed might be more important than anyone could have imagined. 3 weeks after the Zarthans arrived, John found himself in a large meeting room at the Pentagon. Maps and screens covered the walls. Military officers and scientists sat around a long table, their faces serious. John felt out of place in his. Worn field clothes. Sam Carter stood at the front of the room. Dr. Miller has been observing the Zarthans up close. His insights might help us understand their true intentions. All eyes turned to John. He cleared his throat nervously. The Zarthans are very interested in our insects, especially ants. They call them primitive, but they spend hours studying them. John pulled out a small vial from his pocket. This is the protective coating they apply before going outside. I managed to collect a sample. A scientist across the table raised her eyebrows. You stole it? They left it behind, John said. I've analyzed it as best I could with my limited equipment. It creates a barrier on their exoskeletons. I think it protects them from something in our environment. Sam nodded. We've noticed they avoid outdoor activities in humid conditions. They've also been asking detailed questions about our insect control methods. Something is making them uncomfortable. John continued. When they think no one is listening, they talk about ecosystem restructuring. They plan to eliminate most insect species and replace them with engineered alternatives. An older man at the end of the table spoke up. I'm General Howard. We've received similar proposals from the Zarthans, who met with world leaders. They claim our insects are inefficient and offer to help us create better ones. Better for whom? John asked. Insects are essential to our ecosystem. Without them, most plants wouldn't be pollinated. Waste wouldn't break down properly. The entire food chain would collapse. The Zarthans say their engineered replacements would perform the same functions more efficiently, Sam said. John shook his head. I don't trust their motives. They're too interested in eliminating certain species, particularly ants. A woman with short gray hair stood up. She wore a lab coat with Dr. Lisa Dawson on the name tag. Dr. Miller, I'm the head of biochemical analysis here. We should examine that coating sample more thoroughly. If the Zarthans have a vulnerability, we need to identify it. General Howard nodded his approval. Dr. Miller, you'll work with Dr. Dawson. Sam will be your military liaison. Find out what the Zarthans are hiding. For the next 5 days, John worked with Lisa in her advanced laboratory. They ran tests on the Zarthan coating, exposing it to various substances found on Earth. Nothing seems to affect it, Lisa said, looking frustrated. This coating is remarkably resistant to acids, bases, and most chemical compounds. John stared at the sample under the microscope. We need to try something else. The Zarthans were particularly interested in ants. Let's test it against ant venom. They started with common ant species. Fire ants, carpenter ants, harvester ants. The coating resisted them all. On the 6th day, Sam entered the lab with a worried expression. The Zarthans are getting impatient. They've positioned ships over major cities and have given world leaders 3 days to accept their ecosystem restructuring plan. John looked up from his microscope. What happens if we refuse? They didn't say directly, but the threat was clear. They have weapons far beyond our capabilities. Lisa slammed her hand on the table. We're missing something. What makes Earth insects so special that an advanced alien species wants to eliminate them? John thought about his years studying ants. Their venom, he said suddenly. Bullet ants have the most painful sting of any insect on Earth. I haven't tested their venom yet. Can you get some? Lisa asked. I have preserved samples in my field kit, John said, digging through his bag. He pulled out a small container. It's not fresh, but it might work. They prepared the test carefully. 1 drop of bullet ant venom on the Zarthan coating sample. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The coating didn't just weaken, it dissolved. Completely. Look at that, Lisa exclaimed, her eyes wide. The venom is breaking down the molecular structure. John felt his heart race. The bullet ant's venom contains a peptide that affects the nervous system. The Zarthans must have a similar biochemistry to our insects. Sam leaned closer to the microscope. Are you saying bullet ants could hurt the Zarthans? Not just hurt. Them, John said. Their coating protects them from the venom. Without it, they might be extremely vulnerable. Lisa quickly ran more tests. The venom doesn't just penetrate the coating. It seems to trigger a reaction with the synthetic compounds I found in samples of their exoskeleton material. Like an allergic reaction, John suggested. Exactly. A severe one. Sam straightened up. We need to test this theory. How? John asked. We can't just walk up and sting a Zarthan. No, but we can create a controlled situation. Sam pulled out her phone. I need to call General Howard immediately. 2 days later, they had a plan. The United Nations had called an emergency meeting with the Zarthan delegates. The meeting room had been specially prepared. John, Lisa, and Sam watched from a secure room as the UN Secretary-General welcomed the Zarthan delegation. 5 aliens entered, led by a Zarthan John recognized as Commander Krex. Initiating test now, a technician said, pressing a button. Hidden vents in the meeting room released a tiny amount of bullet ant venom into the air, so little that humans wouldn't notice it. The effect on the Zarthans was immediate. They became agitated, their mandibles clicking rapidly. One of them touched his communication device. Our translators are picking up their emergency signals, the technician reported. They're calling for evacuation. They're saying the room is contaminated. WIT, they're calling it the toxic compound. 2 of the Zarthans collapsed. Their exoskeletons showed visible signs of deterioration where the venom particles had made contact. The others rushed to help them, calling urgently into their communication devices. Within minutes, a Zarthan ship appeared above the UN building. The aliens were transported out in a beam of light. It worked, Lisa whispered. The bullet ant venom affects them severely, even in tiny amounts. Sam's phone rang. Yes, General. Yes, we saw ... understood. She hung up. The Zarthan mothership is transmitting a message. They're demanding all research related to Earth insects, particularly ants. They say it's a biological threat. John smiled grimly. They weren't joking about our insects because they thought they were primitive. They were trying to hide their fear. The very creatures they mocked might be our best defense, Lisa said. Sam's phone rang again. Her expression grew serious as she listened. The Zarthans have just destroyed an uninhabited island in the Pacific as a demonstration. They're threatening to target major cities unless we turn over all insect research and agree to their ecosystem restructuring. John thought quickly. The venom affects them, but how do we deliver it to their ships? They'll be on guard now. Lisa looked thoughtful. I might have an idea. The peptide in bullet ant venom becomes airborne when heated to certain temperatures. If we could deliver it to their ventilation systems, we'd need to get close to their ships first, Sam said. John remembered something from his observations. Their ships use atmospheric filters. I saw them changing them at my research station, but they're designed to filter out particles much larger than the venom peptides. The 3 looked at each other as the plan took shape. We need to act fast, Sam said. The Zarthans have given us 24 hours to comply with their demands. Then we better get to work, John replied, already thinking about how to weaponize the very insects the Zarthans had laughed at. The underground military lab buzzed with activity. Scientists in white coats rushed back and forth. Soldiers guarded every entrance. In the center of the main room, John, Lisa, and Sam stood around a table covered with equipment and vials of clear liquid. We've extracted enough venom from the bullet ant specimens, Lisa said, holding up a small container. When heated, the peptides become airborne and remain active for about 30 minutes. John examined a small drone on the table. It was no bigger than his hand, painted black with quiet rotors. "How many of these do we have?" 50, Sam replied. "Each can carry a small heating unit and venom container. They're designed to find air intake vents on the Zarthan ships and release the venom directly into their ventilation systems." General Howard entered the room with several officials in suits. "The President has authorized Operation Formicidae," he announced. "We have 5 hours before the Zarthan's deadline expires." A tall woman in a navy blue suit stepped forward. "I'm Diane Russell, Secretary of Defense. The Zarthans have positioned 27 ships over major cities worldwide. We'll need to coordinate with other countries to hit them all simultaneously." "What about their mothership?" John asked. "It remains in orbit," Diane said. "Beyond our reach for now. Our priority is the ships threatening our cities." Lisa looked worried. "What if this doesn't work? What if they've already modified their ships to filter out the venom? Then humanity will face the toughest fight of its existence," General Howard said grimly. "But we've seen how they react to the venom. It's our best shot." Sam spread a map. On the table, each drone team will deploy near a Zarthan ship. "We've identified likely air intake locations based on thermal imaging." John studied the designs. After weeks of being mocked by the Zarthans, it felt strange to be planning an attack using the very insects they had ridiculed. "The drones need to get within 50 feet of the intake vents," Lisa explained. "Once there, they'll release the heated venom. The Zarthans' filters won't catch particles this small." "What about our people on the ground?" John asked. "Will the venom affect humans?" Lisa shook her head. "We've tested it extensively. The peptide concentration is too low to harm humans or other Earth species. It only affects the Zarthans' unique biochemistry." Diane checked her watch. "Teams are in position worldwide. We launch in 30 minutes. As they made final preparations, a soldier rushed into the room. "The Zarthans are broadcasting a message to all major networks." A large screen on the wall flickered to life. Commander Krex's face appeared, his multiple eyes gleaming. "People of Earth," the Zarthan began, "your leaders have foolishly rejected our generous offer of assistance. Worse, they have attempted to use biological weapons against our diplomatic delegation." Krex's mandibles clicked angrily. "This primitive attack has revealed your hostile intentions. We now demand the surrender of all your governments within 3 hours. If you comply, we will proceed with ecosystem restructuring in a controlled manner. If you resist, we will begin by eliminating your most populous cities." The screen went black. The room was silent for a moment. Then General Howard spoke. "Move up the timeline. Launch the drones now." Around the world, small teams of soldiers and scientists prepared their drones. In New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney, and dozens of other cities, the tiny aircraft took off, heading toward the massive Zarthan ships hovering above. John, Lisa, and Sam watched from the Pentagon's command center as live feeds showed the drones approaching their targets. The Zarthan ships were enormous oval-shaped craft that shimmered with strange energy fields. "First drones approaching target in Beijing," an officer reported. On the screen, they watched as the tiny black dots moved toward the underside of a Zarthan ship. Suddenly, energy beams shot out from the ship, trying to hit the drones. "They've detected them," Sam exclaimed. "But not all of them," John said, pointing to the screen. 3 drones had reached what appeared to be ventilation ports on the ship's surface. They hovered there briefly, then pulled back. "Venom deployed at Beijing target," the officer confirmed that similar reports came in from around the world. Some drones were destroyed, but most reached their targets and released their payload. "Now we wait," Lisa said quietly. The wait wasn't long. 10 minutes after the first Venom deployment, the Zarthan ship over Beijing began to drift sideways. Its lights flickered. Energy readings dropping, an analyst called out. The ship's systems are failing. Similar reports came in from other locations. The Zarthan ships were losing power, their perfect formations breaking apart. Some drifted into stable holding patterns. Others descended slowly to open areas outside cities. It's working, Sam said, gripping John's arm in excitement. On another screen, they could see escape pods launching from the disabled ships, small dart-like craft shooting up toward space. They're retreating to the mothership, General Howard observed. Diane. Russell turned to Lisa. How long will the effects last? The venom causes a severe allergic reaction in their systems, Lisa explained. Even after the initial symptoms pass, they'll remain vulnerable. Their protective coating has been compromised. John watched the screens with mixed feelings. He was relieved that the attack had worked, that Earth cities were safe. But as a scientist, he felt strange using his knowledge of ants as a weapon. Incoming transmission from the Zarthan mothership, an officer announced. Commander Krex appeared on screen again. His exoskeleton showed visible damage, with dark patches where the venom had made contact. Humans, he said, his voice translator, sounding strained. You have deployed a biological agent against our forces. This violation of diplomatic protocol will not be forgotten. General Howard stepped forward. You threatened our cities and planned to destroy our ecosystem. We defended ourselves using the very creatures you mocked. Krex's mandibles clicked rapidly. We underestimated your planet's defensive capabilities. Our ships are compromised. We request safe passage for our escape pods to return to our mothership. And then? Diane Russell asked. We will withdraw to your moon to assess our situation, Krex replied. Further communication will follow. The screen went dark again. The room erupted in cheers and sighs of relief. People hugged each other and shook hands. Earth had stood up to the Zarthans and won the first round. Sam turned to John. Your bullet ants just saved humanity. John smiled modestly. Evolution saved us. The Zarthans thought our insects were primitive. Jokes. They didn't understand that Earth species evolved together, creating complex relationships and defenses. Lisa joined them, looking at data on her tablet. The Zarthans will be back. They'll try to find a way around the venom. Then we'll need to be ready, John said. And we'll need to learn more about them, about their weaknesses, and maybe their true intentions. As the celebration continued around them, the three looked at the screens showing Zarthan escape pods, fleeing toward their mothership. The immediate danger had passed, but John knew this was just the beginning of humanity's relationship with the aliens, who had once laughed at Earth's insects. 3 days passed since Earth's successful defense against the Zarthans. The alien mothership had retreated to orbit around the moon, maintaining radio silence. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets, calling it humanity's greatest victory. News channels played footage of the disabled Zarthan ships being studied by military scientists. John sat in a new office at the Pentagon, surrounded by maps and insect specimens. The government had appointed him lead scientific advisor on Zarthan biology. Lisa worked at a desk nearby, analyzing data from the disabled ships. Sam entered the room with coffee cups. Any word from our friends in space? John shook his head. Nothing yet. They're probably figuring out how to protect themselves from our insect venom. Or planning their next attack, Lisa added, looking up from her computer. Sam handed out the coffee. The president wants options. The world's military forces are on high alert, but we can't stay this way forever. John sipped his coffee thoughtfully. The Zarthans are still a mystery to us. Why did they really come to Earth? Was it just about our insects? A young soldier appeared at the door. Dr. Miller, General Howard needs you in the command center immediately. The Zarthans are broadcasting again. The three rushed to the large room where military personnel gathered around screens. Commander Krex's face appeared, looking healthier than before. People of Earth, Krex began. We have reconsidered our approach to your planet. Your defense mechanism was ... unexpected. We propose a meeting to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence. General Howard looked skeptical. Why should we trust them now? Diane Russell stood beside him. We don't, but we need to hear what they're offering, Krex continued. We request a meeting with your leaders in a neutral location. As a show of good faith, we will share information about our species that will help you understand our actions. The broadcast ended, the room filled with discussion. It could be a trap, Sam suggested. John wasn't so sure. They seemed genuinely surprised by the bullet and venom. Maybe they've realized we're not as primitive as they thought. General Howard turned to John. What do you think, Dr. Miller? You've spent the most time with them. John considered carefully. I think we should meet them, but with extreme caution. And I should be there. I want to hear what they say about their biology. 2 days later, a small team gathered at a remote military base in the desert. John, Lisa, and Sam represented the scientific team. General Howard and Secretary Russell led the military contingent. The president joined by secure video link. A small Zarthan shuttle landed precisely at the agreed time. 4 Zarthans emerged, including Commander Krex. They wore what appeared to be new protective suits covering their EXOSKELNC. The meeting took place in a large tent set up for the occasion. Everyone sat at a round table, humans on one side, Zarthans on the other. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Krex began. We wish to explain why we came to your planet and why we reacted so strongly to your insects. John leaned forward, curious despite his suspicions. Our home world once had creatures similar to your insects, Krex explained. Over millions of years, our species evolved from them. We developed intelligence and technology, eventually eliminating all competing species. One of the other Zarthans placed a device on the table that projected a holographic image of a planet. This is SciFiPrime, our home world, Krex continued. 5,000 years ago, a biological disaster struck. A mutated pathogen affected our food supply. Millions died before we found a solution. The hologram showed scenes of Zarthans suffering, their exoskeletons deteriorating. We created new food sources through genetic engineering. We rebuilt our civilization, but our planet's ecosystem never recovered. We became dependent on engineered solutions for everything. John began to understand. So you came to Earth looking for biological diversity. Krex's mandibles clicked in agreement. Your planet has something ours lost long ago, a natural balance. The very creatures we mocked, your insects, contain biological compounds our scientists have been unable to recreate. But you plan to eliminate our insects, Sam pointed out. A mistake born of fear, Krex admitted. Your bullet ants produce a peptide nearly identical to the pathogen that once devastated our world. When we discovered this, we panicked. Our first instinct was to eliminate the threat. Lisa's eyes widened with realization. You weren't trying to help us by restructuring our ecosystem. You were trying to protect yourselves. Yes, Krex said simply. We believed we could replace your dangerous insects with safer engineered versions. We didn't consider that these compounds might be valuable rather than threatening. General Howard remained suspicious. Why should we believe you now? Because we are offering a true exchange, Krex replied. Your bullet ant venom, carefully controlled, could help us develop treatments for diseases still affecting our people. In return, we can share technology that would benefit Earth. Secretary Russell spoke for the first time. What kind of technology? Another Zarthan activated a different hologram showing advanced medical equipment, clean energy systems, and transportation technology. Impressive, the president said from the video screen. But trust must be earned. you threatened our cities. And you disabled our ships, Krex countered. We have both demonstrated our capabilities. Now we must decide if conflict or cooperation better serves our species. John studied the Zarthans carefully. Their body language seemed different, less arrogant, more cautious. I have a question, he said. If bullet ant venom is so dangerous to you, why risk coming to Earth at all? Krex's multiple eyes focused on John. Desperation. Our population is declining. The engineered solutions are failing. We need biological diversity to survive. The humans exchanged glances. This explanation made sense, but caution was still necessary. We propose a limited scientific exchange, Secretary Russell suggested. Small teams working together under strict supervision. No major changes to either world's ecosystem. This seems reasonable, Krex agreed. The meeting continued for hours, working out details of the proposed cooperation. Armed guards remained present, and both sides were clearly wary. As they finally prepared to conclude, John had one more question. Commander Krex, when you first arrived at my research station, why did you really want to see my ants? Krex's mandibles moved in, what John now recognized as a sign of discomfort. Our scientists detected the peptide signature from orbit. We needed to confirm its source. When we saw your primitive research station focused on the very creatures that could harm us, we assumed you might be developing biological weapons. So you pretended to find them amusing, John said. To hide your fear. Yes, Krex admitted. It is not easy to acknowledge that after thousands of years of technological advancement, we could be threatened by a small insect. As the Zarthans prepared to return to their shuttle, Krex approached John privately. Your understanding of these creatures saved your world, the alien said quietly. Perhaps it may yet save ours as well. John watched the shuttle depart, carrying the Zarthans back to their mothership. The future relationship between Earth and Zartha remained uncertain, but for the first time, it seemed possible that cooperation might replace conflict. Do you trust them? Sam asked, standing beside him. Not entirely, John replied, but I believe their desperation is real, and sometimes that's enough to build something new. 6 months had passed since the first meeting between humans and Zarthans in the desert. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined before the aliens arrived. A new building now stood at the edge of the Amazon rainforest, not far from John's original research station. The sign at the entrance read, Earth-Zartha Joint Research Center. John walked through the main laboratory, observing teams of human and Zarthan scientists working side by side. Some studied insect specimens under advanced microscopes. Others analyzed chemical compounds extracted from various ant species. Dr. Miller, a voice called. John turned to see a Zarthan scientist named Velex approaching. Unlike the first Zarthans John had met, Velex showed genuine respect when discussing Earth insects. The new tests on bullet ant peptides are showing promising results, Velex said, his translator device conveying excitement in his tone. We believe we can create a treatment for the degenerative condition affecting our young. That's excellent news, John replied. He had learned that many Zarthan children suffered from a disease that weakened their exoskeletons. The condition had grown more common in recent generations, threatening their species' future. Lissa entered the lab, carrying data tablets. In the months since first contact, she had become the lead human researcher on Zarthan biology. John, you need to see this, she said, handing him one of the tablets. We've identified why bullet ant venom affects the Zarthans so severely. John studied the information on the screen. Their biochemistry really is similar to Earth insects. The peptide binds to receptors in their nervous system. Exactly, Lisa nodded. It's like finding a missing link in evolution. Despite developing on different planets, there are remarkable similarities in our biochemical pathways. Sam arrived at the research center, now wearing the uniform of a full colonel. After the initial crisis, she had been appointed as military liaison to the Joint Research Project. "How are our visitors behaving today?" she asked, still maintaining a healthy caution around the Zarthans. "Very cooperatively," John assured her. "The scientific exchange is benefiting both sides." Indeed, the limited cooperation had already produced results. The Zarthans had shared technologies that helped clean Earth's most polluted regions. In return, humans provided biological samples and research that helped the aliens understand natural ecosystems better. Commander Krex entered the laboratory, accompanied by Secretary Russell. Both had become key figures in managing the delicate relationship between the two species. "Dr. Miller," Krex greeted John. His attitude had changed dramatically since their first meeting. Gone was the arrogance and mockery. "Our council has reviewed your proposal for limited ecosystem restoration on SciFiPrime. They have approved the first phase." This was the news John had been hoping for. After learning about the biological disaster on the Zarthan homeworld, he had developed a plan to reintroduce certain insect species to their planet, carefully selected to avoid any dangerous interactions with Zarthan biology. "That's wonderful," John said. "When can we begin?" "The first shipment of engineered specimens can leave next month," Krex replied. "Our scientists have prepared a controlled habitat to receive them." Secretary Russell looked pleased. This marks a significant step in our cooperation. From enemies to partners in under a year. Sam remained pragmatic. With appropriate safeguards in place, she reminded everyone. Several Zarthan ships remained in Earth orbit, but they were now research vessels rather than threats. Similarly, Earth kept its defensive capabilities ready, just in case. Later that day, John stood on the observation deck of the research center, looking out at the rainforest. Lisa joined him, carrying coffee. "Thinking about how much has changed?" she asked, John nodded. "6 months ago, I was just studying ants in the jungle. Now we're preparing to send Earth insects to another planet, in specially designed habitats with careful genetic modifications to ensure safety," Lisa added. "It's still hard to believe that the very creatures they mocked ended up being their salvation. And ours," John said. "If they hadn't been so afraid of bullet ants, they might have attacked immediately instead of trying their ecosystem restructuring plan first. That fear gave us time to discover their weakness." From the observation deck, they could see a small Zarthan shuttle landing on a nearby pad. More scientists arriving for the exchange program. "Have you seen the latest public opinion polls?" Lisa asked. "Support for the cooperation is growing. People are starting to see the benefits of having advanced alien allies." "And the Zarthans?" John asked. "According to Valex, their people are divided. Some embrace the partnership with Earth. Others remain fearful of our dangerous biology. But the success of the medical treatments is changing minds." A small group of schoolchildren arrived at the research center, part of an educational program. Human and Zarthan teachers led them through the public areas, explaining the importance of biodiversity and cooperation. John smiled at the sight. "That's the real change. The next generation will grow up knowing we're not alone in the universe. They'll learn from the beginning that different doesn't mean better or worse, just different." Sam joined them on the deck, watching the children's tour. "Still, we keep our guard up," she said quietly. "Trust builds slowly." "As it should," John agreed. "But look how far we've come already." That evening, a formal ceremony marked the signing of the Ecosystem Restoration Treaty. The event was broadcast worldwide and back to SciFiPrime. Commander Krex and Secretary Russell signed on behalf of their respective species. "Today marks a new chapter in the relationship between our worlds," Krex announced. From misunderstanding and conflict, we have found a path to mutual benefit. Secretary Russell added, Earth's biodiversity and Zarthan technology, working together for a better future for both our species. After the ceremony, John found himself alone with Commander Krex in the research center's garden. Insect sounds filled the night air. When you first arrived, John said, you called our insects primitive and inefficient. Krex's mandibles moved in what John now recognized as the Zarthan equivalent of a rueful smile. A grave error in judgment. We had engineered our world to eliminate all we saw as primitive, only to discover that in doing so, we had created our own decline. Nature is rarely inefficient, John said. It just operates on different timescales and priorities than technology. A lesson my people are slowly learning, Krex replied. Thanks to you and your bullet ants. As the Zarthan walked away, John looked up at the stars, thinking about the strange journey that had brought them all to this point. Earth's insects, once a joke to the technologically superior aliens, had not only saved humanity, but might now help save the Zarthans as well. The path ahead would not be easy. Trust would take years to build fully. Misunderstandings would occur. But for the first time since the Zarthans arrived, John felt genuine hope for a shared future between the two worlds, one where differences were respected rather than mocked, and where even the smallest creatures might hold the key to survival.